what I was what I was interested in was in what ways is an election like a documentary, and how the documentary reflects, in a sense, the election. But I really, Danny was saying, talk about semiotics. So I really kind of focused on that at first, and the semiotic sort of construct that jumped out at me from the film was that of three. It's one of the people, the populace, says on the street at the end, toward the end, the politicians always promise you heaven, earth, and sea, and that's this magic three. So the film is really, in a sense, about the number three in a very odd way, and I'll just pinpoint a few of them that flow by rather quickly. The focus group, one of the focus groups came up with their issues were education, housing, and jobs. Manfred Reyes Villa, one of the opposition candidates, came up with sovereignty, dignity, and care. Jeremy Rossner, one of the consultants, comes up with unemployment, corruption, poverty, and that is actually used also by Evo Morales. He uses also that triad of terms. And then Carville uses simplicity, relevance, repetition, and simplicity should be presented creatively, relevance should be presented relentlessly, and repetition should be presented exclusively. So a triad, qualifying a triad there. But Carville actually kind of gives what I thought was the underlying code at 1.2, which maybe if perhaps it's the dialectic, perhaps it's the Trinity, perhaps it's we have threes all over the place. But I think the underlying this is his narrative structure. He talks about it, and this is toward the beginning, the setup, the conflict, and the resolution. And that is the structure under which you then produce these strategies, or these thematic strategies, such as the structural strategy is simplicity, relevance, repetition, but the core issues are then unemployment, corruption, poverty. So the whole thing is has this narrative structure. Now, film has narrative structure, and in a sense, the documentary is also following this narrative structure. It sets up the characters. It does not give a history, a prelude history. What it does, which I found quite interesting and quite sophisticated, is it kind of insinuates a history. You're constantly getting notions of a history to Goni before and his candidacy, but also the history of Bolivia, the loss of the land that Chile took in it was a 19th century war, I believe, in which they took the area of the sea coast. They lost an enormous amount of land to virtually all of the countries around them, and so that history, then the history of Evo Morales's constituency of the Aymara, etc. That just that creeps in along the edges. But there is a kind of setup of the characters, and then there is a series of transition points. The prelude, which is also an afterlude, because actually we see the candidate on the plane going to the United States, I believe it is. So the end is at the beginning, and she kind of creates this return to Washington, D.C., which was actually his beginning. That's where he was as a child. But then the issue of the strategy, the message, the image, the oppositions, the attacks, negative attacks on the other candidates, then the panic, and then the climax of and these are leading to this climax of the election, and then the denouement, the final collapse of the candidacy in the aftermath. So that narrative structure is in the film. It's also in the election itself. So okay, final thing is, you know, the notion of limiting to the frame. And that's what she does. She very clearly limits to the frame of her documentary. She wants us to stay with this particular event, and that's why she doesn't give us a history before. That's why she keeps it the frame extremely tight. But there are some fundamental problems in that as well. She never goes behind the lines, in a sense. She has already picked her protagonists. And she never interviews Evo Morales. She never interviews the other candidates. She does not interview the populace. She's always she's always on the other side of the glass wall, in a sense. She's also watching the study groups, the focus groups, from the same position as her candidate, and she never breaks that positionality of the camera and the point of view. So we're always, in a sense, it's the Rukin figure. We're always looking over the shoulder of the candidate, of the consultants toward this election, which is in the background. I'll leave it to there. Her name, by the way, is Rachel.